go ahead and call this meeting to order. We officially have a quorum. Welcome to the October meeting of the Civilian Review Board. Hopefully everyone has had an opportunity to take a look at the minutes from the previous meeting. Would anyone like to move to accept the minutes as written?
I move.
Okay, I've got a move. May I have a second? All in favor, please raise your hands. Any any opposed? Abstentions? I was not here, Ms. Brock, so I will abstain. Just because I wasn't here. Yep. Before we hear from the Inspector General, I'll turn it over to Mr. Tobias. Do you want to do it now or do you want to wait till our other board members arrive? Okay. All right. Then I will turn it over to the Inspector General for an update.
Good evening, Board Chair. I'm going to just, you should have before you the monthly summary for the month of September. I'm just going to highlight a few things. Complaints received in September was 104, and this year to date, we have received 872 complaints. Of those, we've closed 612. If you go over to the second page, year to date, we have received, we've opened 246 investigations. For the month of September, we opened 31. We closed 37 in September, and year to date, we've closed 238. And currently, we have active 49 investigations. But if you want to go back to the first page, I just want to say, keep in mind that even though we have an active 49 investigations, we still have 24 complaints that are pending information. So depending on the information, that will depend on whether or not we open up additional investigations. And we have 17 complaints that are on administrative hold. And those can be for various reasons. It can be complaints that we receive that might involve an allegation of criminality that we may have forwarded over to CPD just waiting for information. Some of them are officers that may necessarily be on vacation, leave, and so we still put those on administrative hold because we're waiting to be able to get some additional information before we will continue on with our investigations. And then if you go to the last page, you'll see year-to-date investigations reviewed by the board is 207 investigations that have been reviewed. For the month of 18, there is 18 that will be added. And as you can see right now, currently there are 80 investigations that are under board review. And for the month of October, we will be presenting our quarterly report. Because of the stats ending in September, we still have to take the ability to kind of scrub all of that information. So in October, you'll be getting your third quarterly report. If there's any questions, please feel free to ask. Please feel free to email me and I can respond to anything. Thank you so much.
Any questions for the Inspector General? Okay. Before we turn to cases, I think each board member received a proposal that had been submitted by Board Member Strickland pertaining to streamlining cases. Board Member Strickland, in his absence, I'm going to turn over to Dr. Jones, who I think is going to give us kind of a succinct explanation of what the proposal is. And rather than have a long drawn-out discussion, because we have talked about this ad nauseum, we will put it to vote. So following Dr. Jones's recitation, I will look for a motion, if anyone wants to make it, followed by a second and a vote on the new submission.
So as many of you probably have received, there was a proposal emailed out by Board Member Strickland regarding a streamlined process regarding case reviews. And then subsequently, after he sent out the proposal, Committee 1 met and we discussed the proposal as well, offering some additional ideas, context to perhaps strengthen it, but to also talk about the need for a streamlined process when it comes to case reviews. And so I'm going to contextualize this for some people, and hopefully we'll have a fruitful conversation and that will lead to vote. But basically what Board Member Strickland has been proposing several times at this point is a review process in which kind of all of the committees the subcommittees at their discretion would present specific cases that they wanted to discuss at the board meeting, not reading all of them as we have been doing in the past. And so we have discussed that proposal during the meeting, and I think it's kind of gone back and forth. However, we told Kyle, or asked Board Member Strickland to write up his proposal and to submit it. So basically, what he did was he offered a proposal, and in his proposal, he offered sort of two recommendations. And we're going to discuss the first recommendation. The first recommendation is to streamline the process for which we review cases. That being said, instead of reading all of the cases verbatim, the summaries during the meeting, what Board Member Strickland has proposed is that we do that in the subcommittees and not do that during the actual board meeting. And I know there has been some contention and some pushback regarding that. However, I then took Kyle's, or Board Member Strickland's, recommendation and did some research. And I think the research that I did is important for everybody to know. So I looked into several civilian review board, police accountability boards across the country, particularly those that are comparable in size to our board. And one of the things that I did find is that for all of them, there are no case readings of every single case during the meeting. Our board is the only board that reads cases, every single case summary throughout the meeting. And so what I found is that what we have been doing during our meetings, they do not align with best practices, and they don't align with the trends of most civilian review boards, police oversight boards, police accountability boards, whatever they want to call it, across the country, especially those that are comparable in size to ours. What many of the boards have done, and I think we can have a discussion about this, but what many of the boards have done is they have reviewed most of those cases in a subcommittee or some other committee meeting, and then they have brought the cases that are of concern or that they needed more information to the actual board meeting. And during that board meeting, there has been an opportunity for the complainant to come in, there's been an opportunity for the officer of record to come in to discuss or to present their case, and at that time, there's also been body-worn camera footage that has also been played. And so then what happens during the board meetings is that the board members review all the materials, they hear the complainant as well as the officer that's involved, and then they discuss what they think the disposition of that case should be at that time. That said, that is not how we currently do case reviews and process and review our cases. And so I think there is an opportunity there to change the way that we do things. Number one, because it is a long and drawn out process, but I also think that our board meetings can be a little bit more fruitful than what they have been in the past. And that'll go into my recommendation. That's a follow-up to Kyle's recommendation. The other thing that I did, and to add to or to strengthen Board Member Strickland's recommendation, is to provide some parameters around which we would perhaps select and or identify cases if this is the direction that we decide to go in terms of how we choose or select the cases that would be reviewed during the actual board meeting. Those are three parameters that I thought helpful. One is to identify cases in which there are questions and/or concerns regarding the outcome or how the investigation was conducted. I think another parameter could be if there are questions or concerns regarding just the situation that is the topic of the case that is being investigated and/or reviewed at that time. Another selection or reason why a case could be brought for further board or full board discussion is if there is a disagreement between the subcommittee's recommendation and what the Inspector General has recommended or what they found in terms of their investigation of the case. So those are the three parameters that I would propose to provide some guidance and guidelines around how cases are reviewed. That being said, there has been sort of one pressing contention or pushback regarding these full case reviews. One is that there are constant questions regarding subcommittees' review process, what they thought of, and things like that, mainly coming from Board Member Strickland. And then the other is there has to be some form of trust amongst everybody on the board to allow the subcommittee to make the decision and the determination in terms of the outcome of the cases that they reviewed if other people on the board are not going to review all of those cases. If we have boards, and we do have a board, and each person has been appointed to this board, then it is up to us to trust the subcommittee and their judgment in terms of how they review the case and whether or not they agree and/or disagree with the outcome of that investigation. And then trust that if there are cases that are brought to the full board for a discussion, that there is going to be a fruitful conversation and it's not going to go on and on and on in circles. And so with that being said, I think I would be in favor of streamlining the board review or the case review process. I do think that we take up a lot of time during our meetings reading verbatim the case summaries when all of that information is available if we just ask for it. And then I think that we can modify the agendas moving forward for our board meetings to talk about more fruitful things or things that are going to be productive in terms of the types of cases that are coming in for investigation, the allegations, topics of what they are, the officers that are involved, any consistencies or patterns, trends that we are seeing in some of the outcomes that are coming out, and then discuss strategic and tangible policy recommendations, and maybe even start to develop policy reports, recommendation reports that come out of this board. If we did things like that, that would then align more so with what civilian review boards across the country are doing, especially those incomparable in size to ours, because right now we are, again, the only board that is reading every single case summary verbatim during the meeting and spending 3 hours doing so. And so that is the recommendation about that, and then I'll have the follow-up recommendation about the board meetings. Agendas.
Just for clarification, you're submitting that cases in which there are no disagreements, no concerns regarding the investigation, essentially where the subcommittee is agreeing with the recommendation from the IG, just be said out loud by number and then voted on.
Correct. That is what I'm recommending. Correct.
And that the only cases in which there is a recitation or summary are those in which there are questions or concerns regarding the outcome or how the investigation was conducted, questions or concerns regarding the situation that is the topic of the case that's being investigated. I'm assuming that's policy related.
That could be policy related, or it could be if an officer, let's say an officer is pacing somebody and they pull them over and there's questions about, I don't know, targeted policing or pacing or things like that.
Okay.
Yes.
Or if there is disagreement between the subcommittee's recommendation and the IG's finding. Those are the three reasons?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
quick point of clarification for that, Brooke. So I completely agree with you, Dr. Jones. I think we should do that. In terms of the parameters, I think that makes a lot of sense. I did have a quick question in terms of, one of the options that I wanted to leave open on the table is still the ability for any board member to flag a case if they choose to do so. I think it's similar to adopting kind of a consent agenda, which effectively our subcommittees would review the cases. We would come up to a decision. There's no disagreement on anything. We would recommend that we just streamline that process. If a board member happens to say, hey, I want to pull this case up for further discussion, I think we should make sure that we still allow for that. But I think the parameters that Dr. Jones laid out makes a lot of sense.
Could I ask a question, Dr. Jones?
Yes.
The boards that you looked into. Oh, okay. The boards that you looked into, were the board members, do you remember, were they paid members or were they volunteers?
Volunteer boards. However, they were associated with an office similar to our Inspector General, but they were more like a Department of Police Accountability or those sorts of things.
So, for example, in Detroit, they're paid. Did you look at Detroit?
No, because Detroit is not comparable in size to us.
Okay, who did you look at? Can you tell us?
I sure can, as a matter of fact. I looked at New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, Austin, Charlotte, Indianapolis, San Francisco, Seattle, and Denver. Mind you, Columbus has about 900,000 residents, so Philadelphia was at 1.5 million. Austin was at 993,000, Charlotte 943, Indianapolis 891,000, San Francisco 827,000, and so forth. So those that were incomparable in size to ours.
Okay.
Just, go ahead.
Chair, you have the floor.
I was just going to, for Board Member Strickland, the concern about being able to raise questions, I think that covered under if there are questions or concern regarding the outcome or how the investigation was conducted, still leaves an opening for committee members who weren't part of the deciding committee to still raise those issues. I think it then is incumbent on every board member to have read the case. Like, I think our expectation would be, if we're going to question a committee's recommendation, that we're doing so because we've read the report as well, and that is where our questions are coming from, rather than,
Correct.
Dr. Jones reads out a committee's recommendation and says, we agree with the IG, and then someone who hasn't read the report says, well, what about this or what about that? Because I think that is part of streamlining is, if we are going to trust our other committees, then if we are bringing up a question, it's because we read the case and have a question based out of our reading of it.
Yeah, that was. I think that was what I was implied in what I'm trying to say. But also, I think importantly, residents can, just like any process, can submit a request to discuss a case, and obviously it is up to us and incumbent on us as board members. The reason I'm saying that and want to provide that flexibility, certainly that can be the practice, but I just want to make sure that folks know it's not that we're just moving past cases and not reviewing them. And in fact, we're going to leave those available for further discussion if need be. But I agree with standard practice in terms of those types of situations in which we should bring those up.
I think my second recommendation will address the issue for citizens.
I just wanted our board to know there was complete unanimity, as you might assume, but just to make it explicit, there was unanimity on Committee 1 around this proposal to streamline. There's a tactical issue and then a strategic issue, Dr. Jones, that I did want to mention. One, tactically, just in terms of the timing of the subcommittee meetings, obviously, if we are going to be doing a deeper dive into a particular case, inviting a complainant to come in, officer to come in, reviewing, body-worn camera evidence, we're probably going to need to move our subcommittee meetings much earlier in the month. You can't do it the week before and expect the logistics of this to work for the following for the following committee meetings. So it's a small detail and it can be worked out, but subcommittees just have to be aware that if we're going to go to this practice, we're going to need several weeks to have, all of this lined up for our committee meeting, so that everyone is aware. Strategically, on a slightly different point, I wonder if we might. I don't know where the parameter fits a pattern for discussion. For example, we're seeing a pattern early on of special duty officers not wearing body-worn cameras, and we wanted to raise that for the sake of conversation. We're seeing this pattern. We've seen other patterns in our subcommittees of the same kind of issue creating problems. I don't know if a pattern fits under one of your three parameters or if that should be a fourth.
I think understanding the patterns and that sort of activities, I think that would be addressed in my second recommendation.
Under situation?
My second recommendation.
recommendation.
I've only did one recommendation
Oh, no.
so far.
Yeah, but I was just saying in terms of the things that we would be, we're having
We would
further
discuss the
conversations.
patterns in the meeting, yes.
I understood that, but what I'm suggesting is that the case itself would be discussed because we're seeing a pattern, not under your second recommendation, but under Board Member Strickland's first recommendation. As you were setting forth these parameters, I'm suggesting that one of the reasons that we would be discussing a case more fully is to bring to the surface we're seeing this pattern over and over again, and now we need to discuss this case, call it to the attention of the other subcommittee so that they say, oh, okay, yeah, we didn't review that, but now I hear what you're saying, and now we would fit it under your second
I see
recommendation.
what you're saying. So that will fall under parameter number 2, which is subcommittee has questions and or concerns about the situation that is the focus of the investigation.
I was asking, is that where
falls
you're
under
fitting
that.
pattern in?
Yeah.
Under situation?
Yeah, because
Okay,
it would fall under
yeah.
that.
Yeah, we might want to just wordsmith that a drop and say situation or pattern, just because it wouldn't be evident to me that
Okay.
situation meant pattern. Yeah,
Okay.
great.
All right, does anyone who was not on Subcommittee 1 have any questions, concerns, or otherwise before I call for a motion? Sure.
So I just want to make sure there's some differentiation related to what Dr. Jones said about a committee deciding to bring up a claim at a regularly scheduled meeting, whether it's going to just be for additional discourse or whether there's actually a hearing that's going to take place where a witness, a victim, or a police officer may appear. The code under 235.02C allows you to adopt rules related to convening hearings, but I'm looking at the rules right now. I don't see that because the board has not really had a need to have a hearing up to this point.
We do have, I will say this, we do have the ability, we wrote it into our rules and regulations to have hearings. What we did not do, because we did not think, just like I think with this conversation, I think the more specific we get, the more into troubling places we get. We did not specifically denote kind of full hearing process, but we do describe the ability to ask for a hearing. I think we may even have the time frame with which notice of a hearing has to go. So there is.
I'm just having the board be mindful that you'll need to think about whether you're going to administer an oath to folks who are going to testify, admission of documentation, who conducts the direct and cross-examinations, things of that nature. Based on my review of the code, it does not look like the board has subpoena authority. So that's something that we probably need to talk about at some point as to, how are you going to potentially, if it's legally possible, to compel witnesses to show up, or whether they're going to be, for lack of a better phrase, invite only. Just things to think about if you decide, if a committee decides to recommend that they're going to bring something to the regular meeting for a hearing versus additional discourse.
And I just want to clarify, thank you, Attorney Tobias, and I just want to clarify that that is not what I'm proposing at this time. What I'm just simply proposing is the streamlined process of the case reviews. I use that as an example of what other civilian oversight boards are doing during their meetings, not necessarily something that we should do right now.
I have a question, and I'm just a little confused. So are you saying that at our subcommittee hearings, and I was, meetings, yes, that what we should be doing at that our subcommittee hearings, meetings will be more extensive. We will be having, is that what's going to be changing?
No. So
No?
what I'm just simply proposing is that you continue to conduct your subcommittee meetings
Okay.
and review the cases.
Uh-huh.
Those that you agree with the IG, you simply make a note of that and you just read the case number and that you agree on it, that we'll vote on it during the actual meeting. However, if there are cases that you review during your subcommittee that you have questions or concerns about, or you disagree with the IG's recommendations, then you bring those to the full board meeting for a much broader discussion. So you're only bringing a select few cases
Okay.
rather than all of them moving forward. That's what I'm proposing.
Right.
Just for clarity, all cases still have to be brought to a board meeting. It's about not reading the summaries on cases that the subcommittees agree with.
Correct.
The finding.
Correct.
Okay.
Thanks.
And that if a board member who was not in your committee wants to have a question about a case because something they read, the belief is that they have read that case, that they aren't just saying, well, what about case number 235 or 467? It's because they said, well, I read this case and I actually had a question, or I'm not sure if we should agree with the recommendation on case number blah, blah, blah.
So the reason why we were having, and help me out here, the reading of the cases was, I think, twofold. One was a system of checks and balances, because we have to read the case ourselves to be prepared. And then in our subcommittee meeting, we are to discuss that case fully and then bring it to the board. And this group, we can trust that this group will meet and discuss. There will be future board members that maybe will not be trustworthy, and we have to think of the future. There will maybe be some board members who may not go to that committee meeting or who may not read their cases. And the reading, and this is, I'm bringing this up because maybe we can discuss this and figure out how we can do this and streamline. So how do we have that system of checks and balances? Because if all we do is read that case, it can be easy for somebody just not to come to the meeting, not to read their cases, and just put this on their resume. That, to me, is something that the system of checks and balances does not provide if we don't read or do something. I don't necessarily love reading those cases because it's monotonous and it's boring. I agree with you. Now, the second thing that's important is when we do discuss a case, and this can still be done, the policy change is brought about by us discussing these cases. And that's how that one policy change was brought about. All of us saying, oh, we need this body cam because the cases kept coming up off duty. And then we thought, oh, well, we know that's how that came about. And I have a fear, and maybe we can figure out how to do this, that if we don't discuss, if we just, recite case numbers, we won't bring up that policy change. And it's important to do that so those are my two big.
Very, very valid concerns. And I think we can address both of those. In terms of a board member not doing what they are supposed to do in terms of reviewing cases, showing up to subcommittee meetings, we have a policy and a practice in place where they can be removed upon recommendation, and we can go into executive session and we can discuss that if they're not doing what they're supposed to do. In terms of the patterns, it is going to be up to the subcommittees to take note of those patterns as you are reviewing these cases on your own. But also, this will go into my second recommendation. I think also a report, or regular reports from the IG, can also help and assist with that as well. But I do believe we will still catch patterns as we are reviewing these cases in our subcommittees. And then if there's, one that continues to come up, you can bring it to the full board meeting and we'll discuss it. And then that's when we'll say, oh, we've had noticed these patterns too, but we'll probably already be talking about them in real time. And so I think we can address both of those. And then I also will say that the subcommittee meetings are open to the public. There's public notices. Individuals, if they want to know more about their cases or join in the discussion, they can do that during the subcommittee meetings as well. So I think we have a structure in place to address all of your concerns.
Okay, one final thing.
Okay.
The public doesn't seem to be coming to these meetings. So, the public doesn't seem to be coming to these meetings, nor do they come to our subcommittee. And so I feel like it's our responsibility to make sure that the complaints are being addressed and by everyone who's on this board.
And I think that they will be still with that same structure. And it's a matter of me trusting your judgment as well as you review those cases. We're on two different subcommittees, but I trust that when you review them and your committee comes to a decision, that you are making the best decision for that case, given all of the information that happened or that and the evidence that came out during the investigation. Similarly, I would hope that you would trust me and my subcommittee that we thoroughly review those cases and come to a good conclusion for the disposition of them as well.
Okay. So not to belabor, because I think it's clear, Dr. Ford, Board Member Jackson, do either of you have any issues or questions?
Well, the only thing I was just going to add is that there's been several occasions where we did read out cases and we agreed with the IG, but then other board members brought up a point of view that we didn't see at that moment. And so that was good feedback for us because we didn't see your point of view. And it did kind of change the way, we thought, we put more thought into it because we didn't see your view. The second thing is, and I know that however this goes, in reviewing the BWC, which I know our committee does frequently, I also know there's a process that has to be in place to even get with the IG's office to say, hey, we need to see those cases, and they're brought in because right now, yes, we can't wait to the end of the month or closer to the board meeting to do so. We would have to do that very early in the month to let the IGs know, that we need to see those video footage. So that's just the 2 points that come to mind for me.
Very good points.
Can I add something? I just looked at, I totally agree the need for being efficient, streamlining the process. But I think we are the Citizens Review Board responsive to the citizens. And if we just say we approve case number 405, number 307, number 407, the citizens have no idea what we're approving, what we've gone through. I think we need to maybe consider a hybrid model where we at least say we voted, do we agree upon the IG in case number 407, which is a case of misconduct, or at least give a little bit of a background, a 2-sentence synopsis what each case is, to be transparent. If we just read off case numbers here for a consent agenda, we can do that in 5 minutes, and why have a public meeting? So I think we need to be a little more transparent to the citizens about what's going on, because they don't come to our subcommittee meetings. I think we need to have some kind of brief synopsis, a paragraph or less of each case, just to be transparent.
So totally understand that piece, and I think that probably goes into aspects of the second recommendation or future recommendations around dashboards as well.
Okay.
Okay.
So
This is Chairperson Strickland's continual recommendation of a outward-facing dashboard that would give real transparency to the public so that we're not just reading out numbers. Yeah. And just to address your concern, Mary, we actually had real-time experience with our board with individuals who were not showing up or not doing the work, and we did exactly what Dr. Jones said. We not only have theoretical provisions for speaking to individuals and asking them to step off the board, but we've actually done that. So we have a history of enforcing accountability as a board. We've done that. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have been on this now for 30 minutes, despite my suggestion that we not make it a discussion, because we have talked about all these same points have been brought up. So with that in mind, do I have a motion to essentially adopt this proposed streamlining process with those 3 specific reasons for why a case would be read out at a board meeting? And Stephanie, I believe, have you already typed those, or would you like me to read them again?
I want you to.
Okay.
I'll do it. I have certain things, but if you could actually.
I'll do it. I got it. You can do the motion, but here, I'm just going to put this so Stephanie can type it. These are the 3 reasons why a case summary would be read out. The general rule is that if the subcommittee agreed with the recommendation of the IG, that case would be simply called out by number and put up to vote. With these 3 exceptions. If there are questions and or concerns regarding the outcome or how the investigation was conducted. 2, if there are questions or concerns regarding the situation that is the topic of the case that is being investigated at that time. 3, if there is a disagreement between the subcommittee's recommendation and the IG's finding.
I'd like to just make a point. This is why people hate lawyers. Everybody keeps referring to them as subcommittees. They are
Yes, they're
actually
committees.
Subcommittees would be smaller groups coming from a committee. So again, just for the public, anyone else who's digesting this information, I just want to make sure legally we're properly referring to them as committees, not subcommittees.
Yes, that is true.
That is correct.
Committees.
Yes.
I think it's just habit.
Just a minor adjustment. I made a suggestion before. Can we say situation or patterns? Because it's not clear that, yeah, that would.
Sure, we can add or patterns. I do want to
I'll say-
avoid getting too specific so that we end up essentially creating a list of 9 or accepting out things that we wanted to be able to include. So, yes.
I mean,
So I'm going to go ahead and do the
well,
motion.
real quick on that. To this point, though, people can still call for a case and they can just fit within those patterns. Okay.
All right. So I move that the board transitions to a more streamlined case review process, whereas cases that the committees agree on are read and voted on by number, with the exception of cases in which the committee has questions and concerns about how the investigation was conducted. Questions and or concerns about the situation or pattern that is the focus of the investigation, or the committee disagrees with the IG's findings.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, ayes have it. And please note that should it appear as though people are not adhering to the regulations or rules that we set forth today, I am sure that this will come back up for a different vote. All right. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Tobias so that he can swear in the board members who are here with their oaths.
I'll try to make this as quick as possible. I know some of you are like, why are we having to do this now? We've been on the board for a really long time. Just out of the blue, I got an email from Renata Ramsini about 3 weeks ago. She's the city's chief ethics officer. I don't keep track of all the stuff she does, but there's obviously a reason why she reached out to me and said, hey, by the way, does the Civilian Police Review Board, did everybody execute this oath of office, pledge of ethics? And then I reached out to Stephanie, and we realized that Dr. Ford and board member Jackson were the only 2 members who have executed this citywide oath of office, pledge of ethics. I think the rest of you may have executed what is a specific CPRB code of conduct that use some of this language, but we are now using this oath of office, pledge of ethics, double-sided sheet citywide for all boards and commissions. So just for purposes of continuity, we want to make sure that all the board members that have not yet executed this form do that. Normally, I make it a formal process where I read it, do read and repeat, but we're not going to do that today. I just want to make sure if everyone could just, I guess where you have Dr. Jones, Chair Burns, Board Member Younger, Board Member Nathan, and Board Member Strickland are the ones who are going to execute this form. Just raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that you will honestly, in good faith, uphold all of the terms and conditions of this oath of office and pledge of ethics? If so, say I do.
I do.
And then you can sign it down at the bottom where it's your name is printed. Just sign right above your printed name on that front page. And then I will use my fancy notary stamp and sign it and make it official, and then I will get all these copies to Ms. Brock, and we'll be good to go. You can just pass them to your right if you want to do that. I understand. And I appreciate everybody's patience with that. I just want to look them over. Real quick.
All right, now while you are signing those and passing, I'm going to turn it back over to Committee 1. I assume that you were able to get through all of your cases. Is that a good assumption or no?
Good assumption. Pastor Nathan has them.
Okay.
Cases.
So there was a group of cases from last month. I'm going to ask if you could include those first. And given the new review process, I anticipate a quick readout of cases.
I'm sorry, we were, there was a typo on the Civilian Police Review Board. It's not spelled correctly, yeah.
We'll make sure we fix
I'm not sure what members of the board they're on, but
It should be a streamlined process because we agree with most of the
yeah,
cases.
you want to practice that out?
Yes.
Okay. So are we
I can mention this.
dropping back to case 1576 first?
Yes.
Chairperson? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'll take this case here. This was the case where we tabled this for further discussion. Basically, this is where the complainant alleged an officer gave him a ticket and is harassing him in retaliation, and the complainant alleged the officer advised him that he needed a license to ride a bike. There was discussion among our committee, not subcommittee, our committee, about tabling this for further discussion, basically because there was a pending complaint against this officer by this same individual, and so we were just checking to see whether or not there was.
I'm sorry, Board
Follow.
Member Strickland, was this a case that your committee agreed with the outcome at the end? The IG's recommendation?
There was no we haven't got an update.
You've never gotten an update?
Yeah.
Okay, so I would just start with that then. Like,
Okay.
I would say, Inspector General Hendricks, it looks like we have not gotten an update on this case. I think we need more information. Because I think that fits within the streamlining. If this is what we're going to do, then
I get that fits within the streamline. It also fits in the third recommendation, which we haven't gotten to yet. But I was
which we
providing
will get
context.
to after case
Okay,
recitation.
well, great. We're done. We need more information. We're going to not vote on this particular case. But the committee,
Questions emailed to us about this case?
yes.
From who sent them?
I believe Dr. Jones sent them.
Okay.
But we can discuss this further when we get into the report
Okay.
point. But
Did you get them? Did you receive anything?
This case, I'm sorry, this case is from August. You guys were waiting for the outcome of another case. You weren't waiting for status updates from the DIG. There was a case that you were waiting, and I sent an email asking what case were you waiting for? I've never gotten, this was not a status update from the DIG. Your committee was waiting for the outcome of another case. and you never stated what case that was.
So I think we'll get to this in the later discussion when we talk about the report outs and information about how we're even tracking these cases. So, but we'll hold this. Board member Nathan is going to review the other cases that we did agree upon as a board. You just want to read them out and just say.
Yeah. Okay. I was prepared to read out the cases. So we, in our new streamline process, case number 2025-0286 382, 386, 426, 429, 456. So make sure we didn't have any disagreements. 460, 466, 478, 479, 480, 508, 543, 589, yeah, 600, we're going to hold on 641 for a moment because we had a question for the DIG on that, on case 641. And 710, we supported the DIG's findings in each of those cases. And so do I need to have a separate motion, Mr. Tobias, on where the DIG also added? Okay, so we accept the DIG's findings in all of those cases, and so I move to accept those, the DIG's findings.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Okay. It's been first and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, I call the vote. All in favor of accepting those recommendations as given, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Abstention?
Yeah.
Yep.
We have additional findings from the DIG, or additional allegations of additional findings in which the DIG added claims in case number, let's see. Case number 589, the DIG added a finding that the officer did not activate his body-worn camera in violation of CPD's policies. So case 589, I move to accept the DIG's finding, or added their additional finding.
May I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any questions or discussion? All in favor of accepting, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Then we had, this is case number 641. This incident arose as a result of of the complainant's minor daughter allegedly showing obscene photos, receiving obscene photos from an adult. The complainant alleged that the detective was not taking the investigation seriously and was sexist in implying that the daughter was at fault. This was administratively closed due to insufficient evidence. The question that we had regarding case number 641 was, why was it administratively closed? Why did the DIG not do further investigation asking about, just digging in here? And so we were puzzled by the DIG's administrative closure.
Did we receive an email about this, board member? Nathan? Did you ask the question of this before this meeting?
Yes, I believe we
Because I don't have, I mean, we're not prepared to answer that
Dr.
right now.
Jones, I think we...
That one's still in my draft folder.
Okay, no, yeah, we'll
For
be...
641, but I think it was, I'm not sure how we were going to word that question.
I think we wanted to know why it was administratively closed and why there was not additional investigation, Dr. Jones.
Yeah,
Is that our subcommittee?
we did. I'm looking at my notes from the subcommittee meeting, and it looks like it was, why wasn't the sergeant interviewed? Because the sergeant wasn't interviewed, and why wasn't the case investigated more thoroughly despite the complainant's inability to articulate why they believe the sergeant was sexist? So it seems from reading it as though it was just administratively closed without any further investigation, just based off of the fact that the complainant couldn't articulate what she believed to be sexist behavior. However, was a body cam footage, reviewed or anything like that? We were just trying to see what else was done regarding the
Questions
investigation.
asked of the complainant to dig out why she felt that she was being dismissed and why this was sexist yeah.
So we would just ask, because I know you probably can't review it right now, if you can go back
Yes,
and
ma'am,
review
yeah.
it
If you
and
just-
then
yeah,
give
go
us an
ahead, G, I'm
update.
No, I was going to say, just as, I love the streamlining process. So what we would ask, and this is something that's been in place, since we've been here. So we've always asked that you provide us with the questions ahead of time. It gives us the ability to not sit here and try to read this real quick and not look at the case notes, because there's a lot of information.
Apologize.
that goes-
I thought we had sent this.
Yeah, not a problem. 'cause
No,
we-
it's okay.
Yeah, I'll take ownership
We
for
just
that.
literally have hundreds of reports that come across our desk, so, we always want to be accurate. We always want to give you,
I'll forward this
good information.
email to you, so that way you'll have the question and then you can provide us with an answer.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can table it.
Table this to the next meeting.
Absolutely, sir.
Yeah,
Thank you.
great. And are we good on the time on this, just to be careful? We are.
Okay. Turning it over then to committee 2 and 3.
They read their new ones. We have cases tabled from last month that Committee 1 needs to do
Oh,
before they did these.
They did
new
not
ones.
include those in the recitation?
No, that was the new ones. We need the old ones.
Okay.
first.
Committee 1, can you backtrack to the cases that were not reviewed last month? Same format, though, if you know which ones you all agreed with.
Propose to move that further into the agenda as we look into that.
Oh, okay.
Thanks.
All right. So we'll come back to those cases, committees 2 and 3 for your reviews.
So, all right, so the new procedure guide me through this if I don't do it.
All right, I'm right here with you.
You're
I'm
right here?
with you.
Okay. All right, so these were relatively pretty good easy cases. So we concurred with the Inspector General on, I believe, all of them. I will read through DIG complaint number 2025-0324. Do you want me to just read the numbers or?
Numbers is fine.
Just, okay. 2024, I'm going to put that aside. 2025-0424. 2025-0427. 2025-0430. 2025-0472. This particular case also has a DIG findings, 2 allegations. Would it be better if I did this separately when they have DIG allegations?
You can include it for the initial finding and recommendation, and then make a separate motion for the additional recommendation from the IG.
All right. Case number 2025-0472 has 2 separate DIG allegations. Case number 2025-0476, we concurred with the Inspector General. Case number 2025-0500, we concurred with the Inspector General. 2025-0506, we concurred with the Inspector General. 2025-0528, we concurred. 2025-0532, we concurred. And 2025-0548, we concurred. On this particular case, Dr. Ford needed to abstain because the law enforcement officer is a patient of his. There is also a DIG allegation on this particular case. Case number 2025-0593, we did concur with the Inspector General, 2 separate DIG allegations. And case number 2025-0627, we did concur with the Inspector General. And then the case number 2025-0385, we did concur with the Inspector General, and there is a separate DIG allegation on this particular case. This particular case, I had a question, we had a question for Mr. Tobias. Now, under the new streamlined purpose, do you want us to go through this, or the question was answered, and we did, after getting our questions answered, we concur with the Inspector General.
I don't think you have to read it if at the end you concurred still.
So that's okay. All right. So as to the case numbers that I read where there are no DIG allegations, we move that these be accepted.
Okay.
Board Member Younger, did you read out the 0634?
06 what? 24?
Oh, 250634.
Yes, I did.
Okay. Yeah, fine.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So we've got a motion or Board Member Younger, do you mind if I modify and just say a motion to accept all the cases for which you've agreed? Okay. For all the cases listed, I am going to withhold 0548 so that Dr. Ford can abstain. So all of the cases, Board Member Younger gave number 2 with the exception 0548. May I have a second, please? Second. Okay. Got a first and a second. For the initial complaints on each of those cases, all in favor of accepting those recommendations as given, please raise your hand. Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Now I'm going to call, we've got a first on 250548. May I have a second, please, on that? Second. This is the case Dr. Ford is abstaining from. All in favor of accepting that recommendation as given, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Dr. Ford abstains. Any other abstention? Okay. Now I'll turn it back to Board Member Younger for the case numbers that had additional allegations from the IG.
All right. Case number 2025-0385, there is a DIG allegation. Do you need that, allegation?
Nope.
Just,
If it's written in the report,
okay.
that's fine.
And we concurred with that allegation. And on case number 2025-0593, 2 DIG allegations, we concur. Case number 2025-0548, 1 DIG allegation that we concur with. 2025-0472, 2 DIG allegations that we concur with. We move at this time that all the Department of the Inspector General allegations be accepted.
Okay, may I have a second, please? Second. Any questions or discussion? All in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, turning it back to subcommittee, or committee 1, for the cases that were not addressed at last month's meeting.
Chair Burns, I apologize. I didn't have those cases with me. We completed these. I was absent from the last board meeting and somehow wasn't aware that we were covering those same cases this time. So.
Okay. Did Committee 1, did you all meet to discuss case numbers 24-1571 through 25-0547?
We did. I believe I was trying to track down the email, but now that we have our nice streamlined case review process, I forgot how quickly that goes by. But yeah, I think we had like 1 or 2 questions that were answered from that, but on the whole, we agreed, we had agreement across the board, if I recall correctly, but I just wanted to confirm that if our committee.
We met to discuss them, so yeah, I do believe we agreed.
Do you know which cases, do you still have outstanding questions on any of those cases?
No, I think Board Member Strickland misspoke. I didn't submit any questions regarding those.
Okay. So you had agreement on all of the cases?
Yeah, we would. I'd make the motion for agreement through from all these cases: 1571, 1614, 1675, 244, 309, 325, 333, 337, 384, 402, 407, 414, 415, 423, 448, 455, 477, 511, and 547.
Okay. Stephanie, for your notes, the first 3 cases were 24-, all remaining cases were 25-. Yes, okay, I have a first, may I have a second, please?
Second.
Okay, anyone have any questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'll call it to vote. All in favor of accepting those recommendations for the listed cases, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motions carry. All right, at this point, I will turn it back to Dr. Jones, who mentioned having a second recommendation. Note that this is separate and apart from the dashboard, I believe. I believe, Dr. Jones, this is involving reporting and data.
Correct. So, when in my rabbit hole of research of civilian review boards, there's a couple of other things that I noticed. You can take one and pass it on. And one glaringly thing that we are lacking is monthly reports from the Inspector General's office. And so I am proposing that the Inspector General provides monthly reports to the Civilian Review Board prior to every meeting that we have moving forward. There are several reasons for this, which is outlined in the document that I provided each of you, but it includes timely communication, and this also helps to build trust. In terms of making sure that there is some sort of mechanism for which we know how many cases are coming in, how many complaints are being received, what types of complaints are being received, what types of complaints there are dispositions on, the areas of the city in which the complaints are coming in, the shift of the officers that they are coming in. Is it A company, B company, C company? Is it one of the zones? Is it a particular precinct? There should be some regular data provided to the Civilian Review Board, so that way we can start to identify trends and patterns as it pertains to complaints that come into the Civilian Review Board. And so the other thing is that this would also help with early identification of issues. It provides a mechanism for the command staff at CPD to have an opportunity to know what issues they're seeing so they can address them in real time. This also to help strengthen accountability for the IG's office as well as for the Civilian Review Board. This also provides another mechanism for data tracking and public understanding. We don't have a public dashboard. Board Member Strickland has been asking for that, and that'll be another conversation that we have. But this would also help supplement some kind of mechanism so that people can understand the types of complaints that are received, that are closed, what has been administratively put on hold. And then this also helps to reinforce credibility and interdependence. And so for all of these reasons and more, I am recommending or proposing, proposing that we move to a process in which the board, the Inspector General, prior to every board meeting moving forward, beginning next month, provides a regular report, statistical report to the board. And I would like the report to be more comprehensive than what was provided today. If you all noticed that the report that was received today, it provided information on complaints received, complaints closed at intake, open investigations, and closed investigations. I think we should get something a little bit more substantial than this. I would like to know what types of complaints are being received, what are the allegations, which zones those complaints are being received on. I would like that information broken down by precinct. I would also like to know, again, the shift of the officers, what months they're coming in, and this can continue to grow, so that way we are able to identify trends and or patterns. And I have some examples from some other Civilian Review Boards if the IG would like to see that, but this is something that I would like to propose that we get moving forward.
I would love to find out exactly what information it is that you're looking for. What I will say is that we're only able to provide what is in our database right now. So what I would like to do is find out exactly what it is you're looking for so that we can see if that's information that we actually have those fields for, where we can start filling that out. We can also, we're working with Matrix, I know, to be able to get additional fields. So again, I can only provide you what we have, but I do want to know exactly what it is that you're looking for. And I also would say, keep in mind that because I know that the board meets the first Tuesday of the month, providing the information would be very hard to provide you the information for the preceding month, because sometimes it takes time to get that information to scrub it. So I think what you find from us when we give you the quarterly reports is we're usually a month behind, because that gives us the ability to get all that information, scrub it, make sure that what we're giving is accurate. So again, keep in mind, you can ask for the information, but if we don't have the fields, we're not going to be able to provide that for you. But what we will work towards is whatever you're asking us to provide, we'll be looking at what we're having, what information we're able to provide, and provide that and work towards getting additional information and being able to provide that.
So I love that you asked for an example. I have one right here. I also, in my recommendation, specifically stated what I would like or what we would like in the report as well. I do think that is feasible. And then given that you all do have the matrix system, you should be able to provide that information. The first month may be a little difficult, but moving forward after that, all of that information should be readily available to the board.
Again, like I said, I understand what you're asking for, and I'm not saying that we can't provide it, but I can only provide you what we have. If you're asking for something and you feel that we have that in our database and we're just not providing it, I would say please come on over You have the ability, we always are very transparent in what we have, but again, we can only provide what we have. But again, as I stated, we are working to get additional information because we've just kind of been in the place that we've been in. There information that we provide for CPD, for their accreditation, for different things. So we've learned that there's different fields that they're asking for, that we're not collecting that data, so we're looking to try to collect that. So again, we will provide you exactly what we have, and we'll be working to get those additional fields to be able to accumulate that information.
So what is additional fields that I list that you do not currently have?
I believe one of the fields you wanted was per precinct. So I know that we are in the process of collecting information based on incidents that happen. So I would have to kind of look at some of the information may have occurred in the precinct, some may not have occurred in the precinct. So we just want to make sure that what we're reporting is accurate. The other things, when you start talking about shift in information, I know that we list the officers, but we do not have fields where we're keeping track of the shifts of the officers. That's just not something we're keeping track of. So again, you might be asking for something that we're not keeping track of, and we're not going to be able to report out on that. But going forward, if that's something that says, hey, we want to know what the shifts are and things like that, then what happens is we'll start trying to have those fields. We might have to work with Matrix. We also have created other spreadsheets to try to supplement what Matrix does not allow us to do. So again, what I would say, please present the information that you're looking for, that you would like for us to report out on. And what I'll do is go back with my team to be able to say, what fields do we have? What things do we need to do to be able to provide this information? So again, we may not be able to provide it to you for the next month, not even the next 2 months, it just depends. But what we will do is provide you what you're asking for, and we'll be working to try to get those additional fields to be able to provide you for that information.
So currently, Matrix would be able to show type of allegation, would be able to show, because I think we did this in our last annual report,
Right.
kind of a hotspot map sort of thing, like where most complaints are coming from. But we may not get shifts. Is it possible for us to see, I've never seen the kind of the screen where you input information into Matrix. So is it possible for us to get a copy, just a printout of a, I don't want to say a blank one, or a screenshot, just so we know what fields are available?
So Matrix is a huge database. So to answer your question, what we can do is provide you with a screenshot of the fields that we have that we're filling the information, so how we're able to populate it. We still, again, have some challenges for what Matrix is allowing us to be able to do. And we are working, again, to get some additional fields so that we're able to report on that. But we do have some other spreadsheets that we have created to kind of manually put that information in to be able to report on. We're giving you the allegations. It's not going to be an issue. I mean, we have fields. We've reported out on that to be able to let you know what the allegations are. I think one of the other questions, again, I know that you have asked for a lot of different things. I won't remember everything off my head. The best thing I can say is, submit that request of everything that you're looking for. It allows me to be able to go back to say, this is what we need to look at. What fields do we have? How can we get this information? How can we, going forward, be able to report that information, especially if it's information that we don't already have in our fields? Because if we don't have it previously, we're not going to be able to report on it. But going forward, if it's some information that you want additionally, then yes, we'll be trying to create those fields and try to go forward with being able to report that information.
So I'm going to say, I fully endorse this proposal. As a fan of a public dashboard, I fully endorse this proposal. I do hear the question or the points made from the Department Inspector General, just for a broader discussion about capacity and what is currently available. Because when I initially proposed this idea around a public dashboard back a year ago, and then again in April, and then the responses back were about administrative capacity, potential costs, other sorts of concerns, and this was kind of tabled for further discussion. And so And that's just a version of that is ongoing to a time to be determined on when that would be set up. We are now in the interim trying to set up a monthly reporting process, which I agree with and should happen, but to me seems like could also pose some potential capacity concerns. And so I would, unless it doesn't, and then I'd love to hear that we can do it and there's no issue there. Because if there is a capacity concern, then that's some conversation we need to have about the city and about public safety and about the mayor and city council and others to think about what we're prioritizing in terms of the investments it takes to do this type of reporting. But if capacity is not a concern, then we should certainly go ahead and move forward with this.
May I ask, maybe Chair Burns, you could, Mr. Tobias has left, this is more of a philosophical question, or how the board relates to the DIG's office. We have never, I've been on the board since the beginning, as Mrs. Younger has and several others here, but we have never actually seen our role as looking at the structure of the DIG's office. And, you know, they have a budget. They spend their budget the way they choose to spend their budget. We've never asked the question, is that the way that our board would like them to spend their budget? Is that a question that is properly addressed to our board, or is it not?
I don't think it is. Ms. Ross could probably, if she were here, could tell us more definitively. But I do think the question of can we get monthly reports is absolutely within our purview.
The issue of capacity, though, goes to the way that resources allocated in the Inspector General's office. They only have so much resource. They have these personnel. Well, did personnel need to be shifted so that if
Gotcha.
the board says that, as our vice chair is suggesting, that this would be really helpful in order to begin to have the kind of policy and patterns discussion that we want to have if we're streamlining things, but we want to start looking at some patterns in our city. Well, we're running into capacity questions. Well, who gets to, if we're asking for these things, but they're saying we might not have the capacity. Board Member Strickland has been asking for a dashboard repeatedly, and we just heard today we're wanting more transparency. Well, those are policy questions. So who answers those questions?
So, and Mr. Tobias can answer when he's back definitively, but our supervisory authority as far as making a ask or request extends to the IG, but not the IG staff. So we do not have controlling authority over hiring decisions, how many staff they get, how they allocate their funding. So to that end, can we ask for a specific designation of a person to do a thing? No, but we can ask the IG to provide us with monthly reports. And I think we can ask what those
response is
reports
we don't have the capacity.
I think we can say, we'd like the reports. So, I mean, in the past, when I asked for the heat map to be included in our annual report, it got done. So I think now, I'm separating this out from the dashboard discussion because I think they are two different discussions. And I also think capacity and resources looks different because that's different. Unless the IG has a specific IT person who crafts whatever, I think they're separate. I think we can make the ask, and I will call an official vote in a moment to see if that is what everyone would like to do, that we'd like a monthly report. I think the details of which we can continue to work through what is in those, but just so we're clear that those are separate things. So yes, Board Member Strickland.
Question on that. I mean, that's how you all are both kind of defining it in terms of it being separate. I am opening up for further discussion as to why they need to be separate, because my understanding is that if you had a dashboard to actually work from the beginning, you build that out, it actually makes it much more efficient to be able to do those types of reporting over the long run. And so I'm fine if we wanted just to vote on that separately, but I am mindful of capacity constraints and want to actually prioritize, and if needed, what are the types of resources that it's going to require to do this type of reporting. And so I'm open. I'd love discussion with this board, and then maybe if there's further thoughts or comments from the Department of Inspector General, that would be helpful as well.
Well, I'll just chime in here regarding the dashboard and the monthly reports. I do think they are separate. I do think a dashboard would help streamline the process for the monthly reports, but I think there should be, and there should have been, this is not something that should be just starting right now. From the inception of the board, we should have been receiving monthly reports. And so the fact that that has not happened, and it does have to be called for a vote, is a little concerning, but nevertheless, we're here now. I think the report would provide an additional level of transparency so that we, the board, know exactly what's happening on a month-to-month basis in terms of the cases that are coming in, the dispositions of them, where they are happening in the city, because that we always talk about policy recommendations and identifying trends and things like that. If we don't have a dashboard, the other way around that is to understand or to read the review or the monthly reports to see that. That said, I do think there needs to be a dashboard, but they should have, the monthly reports should have been happening. And so, again, similar to the way that we hold our monthly meetings, we're the only civilian review board that does not receive a monthly report. And I think that that's concerning. And then I also think in terms of the monthly report, this also becomes a public document, it becomes a public record, so citizens can also see what is going on and what exactly is happening in the Office of the Inspector General. I just think that's important. It provides a level of transparency. And yes, we do need a dashboard, but I'm curious to get an update on that feasibility of the dashboard, because it kind of just fizzled away. And then also to understand what was determined based off of that as well. And we can have that conversation too, but I definitely think the reports are up for a vote, so I definitely think we need to move forward with that.
Chance for a committee too, and then also DIG.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to do some clarifications. So we do provide a monthly report, and we have been providing a monthly report since inception. Any additional information that is asked, we are really happy to provide, and we've been doing that. If there's additional information that is asked, we just ask that you ask for whatever additional information in the report that you're not receiving so that we can do that. We also provide a quarterly report, and we've been doing that ever since the office has been inception. That's just the beginning. We've done a quarterly report. We've also done the annual report, and I also provide a biweekly report to the chair, and I've done it for the first chair, Chair Jackson. I've been doing it for Chair Burns, and there are times, again, sometimes I know I'm kind of late with some of the things, but whatever information you're asking, we're going to provide that. It's just when you ask for stuff, and just going back to what Vice Chair Jones stated, is that you wanted this information and you say, hey, I want this information by the next month. Well, I needed to be clear that I hear what you're saying, but we may not necessarily have those fields. So I don't want to say that we're going to give you something that we're not able to give you. But what I say is that tell me what it is that you want. When we go back, we look to see if we have those fields within Matrix. Because again, when we dealt with Matrix because the prosecutor office deals with Matrix. That was one of the reasons that we accepted the database. So it's just a matter of being able to put the information in and provide it. And when it comes to the dashboard, it is a separate subject. A dashboard, if you think about it, is a face forward of information that is shared. But the information shared only comes from the database of what is put in there. So I hear what you're saying. Again, it's the same thing. You can ask from a report for me and say that you want this information, and you can say, hey, we want this information in our on the data board. But again, we can only provide what we are collecting.
Can I just interject here and say, it sounds like there's a desire to get more detailed information every month before our meetings.
Correct.
So more expansive than just the, here's what's opened, here's what's closed, et cetera, what we're currently getting. And Board Member Jackson, I know you have to leave, so I'm hoping to call this vote before you walk out the door, if I could.
And I would just like to put a point of clarification that the update is not a report that the IG provides.
So my whole point in saying this is we are asking for additional information than what we're currently getting every month, okay? And that understanding, and I get how monthly reports in the rears. I do monthly reports for my agency, and my report that I just submitted in October was not September. It was August, just based on...
Practice from August.
Yes. So my point being, that is the motion that I'm asking to be called for. I think the details of which, including what are all the categories we want, what's the capability of whether we can get that, and if not, how quickly could Matrix be updated to get those fields, are details that I will ask IG Hendricks and Dr. Jones to talk through. If other board members have other specific categories of things that you think could be or should be included in a monthly report, please email Dr. Jones with that so she can include that with her discussion with the IG. Would anyone like to make a motion for a more enhanced monthly report that we get at each meeting?
Absolutely. I move that the IG provides the board with an enhanced monthly report.
Okay, all in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you for staying long enough to get the vote on that. All right, so this, we have again, and I do not know the time frame. I will acknowledge I also need to get on the road soon because I have an oral argument in Defiance County that I would like to not be still on the road by 10 o'clock. So the other issue that was proposed by Board Member Strickland that has been referenced multiple times is specifically about dashboard feasibility and something that is public facing. We have had many a conversation about it. I would like to propose that we have at our November meeting a set aside time to talk about what the office has discovered in terms of cost and feasibility. I know Dr. Jones is aware of some free or low cost options that may integrate with Matrix in a way that helps us create maybe not the full formed version that we would like to see, but that would at least serve as a starting point for what a public-facing dashboard can be. I'm going to ask if board members who are interested in working on this would also come up with list of things. Yes.
We can do that, and I think what is keeping us from proposing that the review board ask the Department of Inspector General to establish a public-facing dashboard, and then we can hammer out the details just like we're hammering out the details with the reports, because I worry that we're just now pushing this further and further and further
we
along.
We have asked, and what we ran into before is not knowing the cost. I don't know that we've heard a report back about.
You can do this at no cost.
Right,
No,
and that's
I
what I'm
think what-
saying,
I
Board
think what
Member
Chair-
Strickland.
I think what
I
Chair
think we
Burns is
sent the
getting at
email
is
out.
we had asked for that feasibility and we voted on that and we still haven't heard the outcome of that, and we would like to have the outcome of that before we move forward with making the full recommendation.
But we got an update that it's going to take longer than initially expected because there are other departments involved and there's a process. And so I think what I would propose is that, because I agree, it's not just on the Department Inspector General. There's nothing keeping our Civilian Police Review Board from making a recommendation to establish a public-facing dashboard for case recommendation. I think it could get tacked on to a version of the monthly reports, but we don't need to have a whole discussion about it again. I mean, I think I laid out and we've talked about what this would do. If you're a complainant, you'd be able to keep track of your complaint process. You'd be able to see cases as they're working its way through the system, as well as what you would be able to see in the reports. The reason I think it's important for us to vote on this and to actually move this forward is so that we can make clear that this is a priority of the Civilian Police Review Board, because so far it has not been a priority of our board. And so as a result, I mean, there are other departments, talking about things to work on, but the board hasn't even voted on it other than saying we'd like a feasibility study. I think this is an opportunity for us to actually move forward and get serious about having a dashboard to work from.
Any other thoughts from any other board members?
My thoughts together. I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, well, because this clearly has been some sort of hurdle that our board has not been able to quite get to.
It has, but I'm a little hesitant with moving forward with it because maybe I just missed it, but I didn't see what the recommendations were or the feasibility study or what the outcomes were of that. And I would like to get refreshed and updated on that before making a decision.
And just a preview, this is going to take longer than we thought because there's more to look into and whatnot.
And so that's why my proposal was we actually have that conversation at our next board meeting, not that we just do what we've done, which is say we need a dashboard, but we say, all right, so when it was looked into, how much did it cost? Why can't Matrix do this thing on its own? Like, what are all the ins and outs we need? I don't disagree that a dashboard would be helpful. I do think it's also incumbent on us to hear what's the foot traffic look like on our current website? How many calls are you all getting from people to actually see the outcomes of their cases? And so I think...
Are you opposed to a dashboard?
I'm not opposed to a dashboard. I am hesitant to say, just go create a dashboard and...
That's not what I'm saying. I think in best practices, just as Dr. Jones, Vice Chair Jones has referred to, most of these jurisdictions that she's looking at have a dashboard just like this.
I understand that. And so, again, before my proposal was cut off, I would say what I wanted everyone to do was for our focused policy conversation to be that. To be, what's the report back on? Who did we talk to about how much a dashboard would cost? What's the feasibility? If we're talking about doing something with other offices, like what happened with that? And if that idea of a fully formed, top of the line, whatever our brightest wishes and hopes would be, is not something feasible now, is something like utilizing Tableau, which is used by lots of state agencies, city agencies. Like, is that a contract we already have? If we have a Tableau account, then how easy would it be to set up something that allows, even if it's not the full version we want, something that allows the public to be able to access that?
Excuse me, Chair, but I think I was trying to remember. I think Tableau is the one that the city has. That was the one that we had gotten from IT. I was trying to remember. I think we did. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Board Strickland had asked for an update, and we had provided it from you in an email. And that was something that the city already had. So the issue was, we don't have an IT department. So we're working with the city's IT department to get the information. So that was the last thing that we had talked to. So I think that's where we're trying to go with, because the city already has that. It's a lot easier, but what we're looking again is the database. How do we do the database? Where's the database going to be stored? Because right now, Matrix is saved on the server along with the city's attorney's department. So again, there's just some dynamics that we're still working out, but we had a conversation. We did send some email
Could we
out.
could we have someone from the IT department
Yeah,
attend
that's-
our next meeting?
I did put that down to see if that might be
Okay.
something we have to bring someone in.
I think the issue is, though, in terms of helping them along in this process, we don't have to do it now. We can wait till November, but I do think a vote of endorsement from a recommendation from the Civilian Police Review Board also helps their case in terms of, as they're working with other departments, about, hey, the Civilian Police Review Board voted on this, where this is clearly a priority of the board, and so we are trying to actually implement this and move this along. Because I think the challenge is right now we're asking them a lot of questions of these very same things, these questions that they're going to have about these monthly reports. But we haven't said that this is actually a priority of the board, that we like to see this public dashboard. I understand the feasibility questions, but if we want to wait and hold this till November, happy to. But again, we have a lot of delay in this bureaucracy, and if somebody or if a board actually made this commitment, I think it would help move this process further.
I think you definitely have board commitment to it. I think holding off the vote till November is probably a judicious approach to this. But during that November meeting, I hope, my expectation is that we do receive a thorough overview of the feasibility of this dashboard, but not just looking at Tableau. I also want to see what other options were explored, the costs that are associated with those, and then looking at integrating of the systems and all of that, and whether or not it is a possibility. And if you use our IT department, that's fine. I do have some concerns about that, because we did endure a huge cyber issue under our current IT people. But whatever is feasible and whatever research that you all are able to provide, I think that would be helpful in determining a best move forward. And I would also advise the IG's office to look at what some of the other offices of Inspector General, Office of Police Accountability, those sorts of things around the country are using. A lot of them are using software called Silva, so that may be a viable option as well. But just looking at different ones except for just one. That's what I would like.
I'm with you on that.
Stephanie, can you see if we can get a representative from the city IT's department to join us in November? Everyone, please come with your questions that you would like to ask, including time for setup, information, anything your heart could dream of with the dashboard. All right?
Is there any way to find out if the public or the complainants, the individuals who use the Civilian Review Board, really will access these dashboards? I mean, in your mind, Kyle, you have an idea what a dashboard is. I don't. Maybe you can, at the next meeting, explain it. Like I worked at the Public Defender's Office, and sometimes our clients just don't know how to access what they.
Yeah,
See, this would be, okay.
it's just like this, but like you would be able to go to the website. Like, for
Okay.
example, you could go to the website, and instead of having dig through meeting minutes and agenda items and materials, you'd be able to just see the dashboard. And so ahead of the November meeting, I can commit to as well submitting examples and maybe just screenshots, so it's not just written words. Oh, perfect. So like Chicago, other places, it's a great example.
That'd be great to send it out. I'd like that too.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah. There are some people that still don't have computers. They have to go to libraries or you know, that's my worry
I think
sometimes
it's
too.
a big question
but-
around accessibility. I think there's
Yeah.
more we could do to provide written reports. I think there's also more we can do in terms of going to city council and reporting out on some of these steps. There's more efforts we could take, certainly, to make sure folks have access to that. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Well, I am going, yes.
I just wanted to ask, if you have any questions for IT, I would ask that you submit those ahead of time before, because again, IT has to work with Matrix. I mean, it's not like one department. So if you ask those questions ahead of time, so we have them and we can prepare that, we can talk to the different entities so that we'll be able to answer your question. I just would hate for IT to be here and for you to ask IT all these questions. IT's like, they're not going to have the answers. So if we get those ahead of time, that would be great.
If we could maybe, let's say, within the next 2 weeks, Stephanie, if you could send an email reminder asking board members to submit any questions they would have for an IT about building, what a dashboard would take to build, have those sent in. All right, I have to get on the road, so I would entertain a motion to dismiss or motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a second. All in favor? All right, so adjourned. Thank you.